Battles are won before they're fought. And so, how do you prepare? Do you analyze? Have you done a great job of analyzing what your needs are? What change of course you need to make in order to either grow in your success or maintain the success that you've had on the field?
Episode 109 featured Stan Hodgin, the offensive coordinator and associate head coach at Shenandoah University. For more content like this, be sure to like and subscribe.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
Coach Hodgin is the offensive coordinator and associate head coach at Shenandoah University. Coach and I were just talking about this, but I played at Gettysburg and he coaches at Shenandoah. We used to scrimmage each other back in the day, so we have some ties back when I was a player. But thanks for coming on, Coach.
Oh, it's great to be here, and thanks for the opportunity.
So to get things started, can you just share with the audience about your career and how you've gotten into your current role at Shenandoah?
Well, I grew up in a home of a football coach. My dad was a high school teacher and coach for his career, and so really growing up, I was not aware there was other opportunities out there. I never wanted to be a policeman or a fireman, or I just thought as you got older, you started coaching once your playing career was over. So, I mean, at a very young age, I knew exactly the direction I wanted to go professionally. Once I finished college, my first job was in the high school ranks in the Triangle area of North Carolina. And I was there for a handful of years and about a dozen. And then across the border of Virginia, was a high school head coach in the southern part of Virginia for 5 years. Then I had the opportunity to jump to the collegiate level and spent 1 year at Averett down in Danville, Virginia. And then I went out Western Virginia to Emory and Henry for 2 seasons. And then in 2013, came to Shenandoah with Coach Scott Yoder, our head coach.
Great. So can you talk about that experience coming from a coaching family and how you knew at such a young age that you wanted to get into this profession?
I don't know that it was actually that I fell in love with the profession, although I did. It was kind of because of the hours that high school coaches work, especially in the summertime and in your preparation for the season, running the weight room and overseeing skill development drills. I mean, that is the life that I lived. And so once I remember being old enough to not need parental guidance every second of the day. And once I reached that point, I was always with my dad. And so that was just what I was exposed to. And I kind of just felt like that's what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
But in hindsight, that I don't regret a single part of the experience, nor do I regret a decision that I made to pursue this as a profession.
Great. And coming from a high school background for your first 12 years at your first job, and then going to be a head coach at a high school program, can you talk about how being a high school coach has helped you now stepping into college and your current role at Everett and now at Shenandoah?
I think every step of the way, I've learned lessons that help prepare me for whatever that next opportunity would be when it presented itself. I think specifically at the high school level, you're basically getting you're starting to work with young men at like the age of 14. And so the concerns that they have, or the difficulties they're having from that age, that 14 to 17, 14 to 18, is quite different than the challenges and problems that an 18 to 22-year-old have. When I was coaching during my time early in my career, obviously I didn't have children that were of that age. So that was a big help in my development of understanding that age group, because I was old enough to be kind of out of touch with that 14 to 18-year-old, but I wasn't far enough along in my parental maturity to have children that age. So, that was most of the lessons I learned about that time had to do with communication and how to touch base and how to be authentic with with really an age group that's looking to find themselves. And so I think that was very valuable, and it's still very valuable today. It's just the challenges and the problems we deal with today, and with the 18 to 22 year olds are just a little bit more complicated. That's all. So, but still very similar.
Yeah, and I had a conversation on the podcast a few weeks ago, and we were just talking about the importance of relationships, not only with your players, but also with the rest of your coaching staff. And I think, like you were saying, it all comes down to communication and knowing the audience, because like you were saying, a 14-year-old who's just trying to find themselves, who's just a freshman in high school, they're going to be a lot different than that 20 through 22-year-old who's a sophomore, junior, or senior in college. And in what ways was that communication different for you?
I, I think I think it was a little bit easier that the the ability to connect, the ability to communicate with the college age student was probably easier transition for me, because by that point I had my wife and I are blessed with 4 daughters, and our children were approaching that age. And so I kind of, had some experience with, communicating with, I've now helped foster our oldest daughter, who at the time was, in that 14 to 18-year-old range. And so it was just beneficial, the experiences I had as a dad, and helping raise children in our own home. So then you kind of have a little better understand. I had a little better understanding of, what the values and what the concerns and what the goals and dreams and aspirations of that 18 to 22-year-old are.
Yeah, and one thing that I learned from one of my mentors at Gettysburg, Coach Streeter, who you might actually have known. So Coach Streeter would always just talk about, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, being able to not only communicate, but also like as a coach, he was somebody who connected with me really well and connected with a lot of my teammates. So I think in coaching, it's about bringing where people are to where they need to be. And it's not always going to be what they want to do, but you have to know how to direct them. And if you know that age range better and you're really familiar with them, I think, you'll be a lot more successful. And for somebody like Coach Streeter, he was doing this for 40 years. So he had a lot of experience in that realm.
Well, Coach Streeter is certainly a gem of our profession, and the times that I had an opportunity to spend with him, I value those. He was always insightful, and I still hold on to some of the nuggets that he shared with me during our time together. And to take what you just said a little bit farther, I think the most rewarding part about being at a place, and in this case Shenandoah, for as long as I have, is I've now been here long enough that we have guys on our staff now that I actually coached. And so, as we were introduced to each other, and maybe it was coach recruit relationship, then it was coach player relationship, and now those relationships have developed into the coach relationship. And again, it's all about, it doesn't matter if you're 14, you're 18, you're 25, or you're 50. We all have challenges, and having someone that you can turn to for a voice of reason is invaluable. And it's kind of, I kind of chuckle privately now that one of the guys that I recruited that then played for us and is now coaching with us has now become, in many cases, my voice of reason. And so it's just kind of come full circle, very rewarding. but I do privately chuckle about how that relationship has grown and developed.
Yeah, well, that's a great thing. Just being able to see that progression of the kids that you help bring up. I'm sure it is. I haven't been able to see that yet, but I'm sure hearing it from you, it sounds like it's definitely a rewarding experience.
Absolutely.
Awesome, coach. Any last words you want to share with the audience today?
I think I'm a I read I read one book twice a year. That sounded really bad. Makes it sound like I don't read. Every year, just before spring practice and just before fall camp, I read the same book, and that's The Art of War. And the things that I get out of The Art of War, and I pick up something every time. I probably read it, golly, I mean, gaining on 30 times now. I always pick up something new. But the thing that resonates me and keeps me coming back to that book is, it's knowing your opponent and knowing yourself. And battles are won before they're fought. And so, how do you prepare? Um, do you analyze? Have you done a great job of analyzing what your needs are? What change of course you need to make in order to either grow in your success or maintain the success that you've had on the field. But I think knowing yourself is more important than knowing your opponent. And knowing yourself can be applied to many phases of your life. I certainly try to apply it in many phases of my own. But I do believe that the value in knowing yourself, or knowing your own team, knowing your own locker room, knowing your own coaching staff, knowing your own family is probably more valuable than knowing your opponent, or knowing what the challenges or circumstances you're going to face down the road are. And I highly recommend that book. I'm sure probably more people have read it than not, but it's a great reread, and I highly recommend that. So just knowing yourself and understanding what you are and what you are capable of, and what your own limitations are.
Yes, sir. And actually, I just wanted to bring up one thing that I was actually talking with a former teammate of mine that relates to that, about, because he also, after he graduated, he started doing bodybuilding. And one of the things that he's working on is just trying to continuously improve. And he sees people in the bodybuilding world that have been doing the same thing year after year after year, and they're not getting any better, although they've been doing bodybuilding for 5, 6, 7 years. So he says, you can't just have the same year for 5 years in a row. You have to do new things and just know yourself in a better way every year. So I appreciate you sharing that, coach.